So today what I want to do is I'm going to show you how to make a simple motor. So this is going to be something that spins on its own and runs like crazy, and it uses pretty simple parts. We're going to have a magnet. We're going to have some wire, battery holder, a couple other wires to connect the battery up, and a few paper clips and a little bit of tape. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make our coil assembly. Really important that we have this little coil thing that will allow, as the electricity passes through it, creates a little magnetic field inside this coil. There's something about when electricity runs through a circle, it creates a magnetic field. That interacting with this magnet down here will allow it to do a little spinning motion. And you notice my coil, when I spin it like this, has a real nice even spin to it, and that's what we want to try to do with our coils. If it's off a little bit, like if I change it so that the wires off the side are not going through the center, and I spin it, you see there's a big wobble in there, and that will not create a very good motor. So you've got to be careful to try to get that in there as best you can. Alright, let's start off by making our coil assembly. So we got this thin gauge wire here, and you have to kind of undo it and make sure there's not, see I got a kink starting in here and I don't want that, so you got to straighten out those kinks, make sure it's all nice and straight. And we're going to use the battery as our template for how big to make that coil. There's nothing magical about how big the coil is, although that would be an interesting inquiry project to work on to see if the size of the coil makes a big difference or not. Wrap. So make sure you leave enough tail on the end here so you can do these little tiny wraps on the end here. That helps to keep the coils together. It also helps to keep this end piece in line. Okay, so we're going to leave a little extra here, and then we'll just wrap around the battery until we get to the end of our wire, and we have about that same amount of tail that we do on this side as we do on this side, approximately. And you know, maybe 4 inches or so, something like that. 3-4 inches. Okay, so then we got that. We slide it off the battery, holding the coil in place. That way you don't lose all the material. And you'll take that little extra tail and wrap it around, I would say at least 3 times, but 4 times is fine too. And you want your tail that's sticking out to be about 2 inches long. When you come and do the other side, again, make sure you have it across the coil as much as you can. Try to go straight through the center of the circle for those 2 lines. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go one more wrap. Yeah, it's maybe a little bit short on this side, but should work okay. Okay, I have now my completed coil, and I do a little test. So I spin it around. It's not. You should be able to spin it in your fingers, and it should be able to continue. Although it's not always easy to do, but you should have be able to do a little spin in your fingers. I'm going to take the paper clips this time, and what we're going to do with the paper clips is make a holder. We need it to hold up our little motor here, our little wire coil. So I'm going to unfold the paper clip and create a 90-degree angle with the larger side. This is the larger side. So I create a 90-degree angle there. And on this side, I'm going to go another 90-degree angle between here and here. So I'm creating 2 90-degree angles on that, and I'll do that twice. Now on the long side down here, on this longer end, we're going to take that and we're going to bend it 90 degrees at a perpendicular angle to everything else that's going on in that. And that's going to help it to stand up. So when we tape this down, it can stand up and not fall over. Okay, So now we need to sand off some of this red enamel. This red is an insulator. It keeps electricity from flowing through it. If I was to put this coil on my paper clips and try to run electricity through it, it wouldn't work. There's no connection there. So I have to take off the enamel off the wire. But, very importantly, I only want to take it off on one side of the wire. Only on, well, it's not on one side here, one side of this strand here. I want it to be this half to be taken off and this half to be taken off. But if I flip the coil over, I need this enamel to stay on. This will allow there to be a break, an interruption in the electrical current, so there's some coasting that can go on. There'll be a grab, a pull, a push, and then a coast. Grab, pull, push, coast, grab, pull, push, coast. So we need to do that for half and half. And the way I like to do it is I hang it over the desk, and I do a little sandpaper to the wire that's sitting on here, making sure I get as much of that sanded so that I can't see the red anymore, and then I turn it slightly so I can get a little bit more of it, and then I turn it slightly the other direction. But I make sure that I never flip it all the way over because I need to keep this part of the red enamel intact. That's important. And then doing the opposite side, make sure you're also sanding off on the same side. That's really important. Don't be random about this. Make sure you're sanding off the correct side. Create a top and a bottom for your coil. Okay. So you probably can't see this in the picture, in the movie, but there's a red side here and more of a coppery looking side on this side. Now we're set to make our stand and run our little motor. Okay, now it's time for us to hook up our little stands and have those so that we can hold our coils and spin this little motor guy that we're making. So we'll start off with using our tape, about half of that tape, and tape down that angled portion that was there before. Tape that down so that this guy can kind of stay up on his own. Alright, straighten that up a little bit. And do that for the other side too. And you want to set it up so that the coil will rest inside of that little cradle there. And so we got to play with the distance a little bit. It doesn't have to be something magical, but make sure there's a little bit of room for it to move back and forth. On there. Tape that end down. And now we can just put it in the little cradle there and test our spin. Do a little spin test. Notice when I spin it that it's sliding down to this end over here, so I need to lift this one up just a touch. That's a little bit better. Now we take our battery and we're going to put our battery in there. We're going to hook up our wires to both sides, and we need to get our magnet in place. We'll put the tape on the magnet and place that magnet directly beneath that coil. We want it right in the center. Careful not to get it too close to the paper clips because it'll attract that paper clip. Okay, hook up one end to the bottom of this paper clip, and this will allow electricity to flow through that coil. See if we get any reaction. So give it a little spin, and off it goes.